Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I am the food enthusiast here at More Living. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Sometimes you'll see me looking off to the side. I'm checking to see if there's any comments or questions for our guests, so do feel free, and I will be checking from time to time. Today's guest is a milkman for delicious breads, Lane Levine, founder and owner of A Friendly Bread. Hi, Lane. Let's see, here he
Hello
comes.
there.
Hi.
Hi.
Um, I'm trying to be clever with this question. Where did the germ of the idea to start your own bread company arise? When
Great
did
bread
bread
puns.
make
That's a good start. Yeah.
uh, when did bread making change from an avocation to a vocation? Your Harvard degree was definitely not in bread baking. So tell us how A Friendly Bread got started and what you do.
Okay. My grandfather used to be the person who would bake bread for all of his friends when he was still alive, when I was growing up. And so that was a part of just what I was around. But I didn't start baking bread until when my husband and I were living in Northern California about 10 years ago. And there was a little bakery called Los Bagels that was run by a couple that was part Mexican Catholic and part Jewish. And they had the best challah that I had ever had. And I would order the challah every Friday night to take to our one Jewish couple friends that we
Right.
would visit. And I'm not talking like San Francisco, Northern California, and I'm talking rural Humboldt County, Northern California. So there were not a lot of us out there.
Where the big trees are.
Exactly. The big trees and the big weed grows. And I did some poor planning one night, and it turned out that it was Christmas Eve on that particular Shabbat. And so I couldn't get my challah. And so I tried my hand at making my own challah that night, and I did it. And then by the time it was ready for us to move out of Humboldt County, I went to Los Bagels and I asked them for the challah recipe now that I was going to be moving away. And they very generously gave it to me. So what we use now is a modified version of that recipe. Um, Once I moved back to Baltimore, I was working in nonprofit jobs. That's what I had done for about 12 years after I graduated college. And I was learning to make sourdough bread on the side. It's just more of a challenge than some of the other breads I had made. And so you'll find from a lot of people that make sourdough that it's just, it's the thrill of the challenge and the thrill of the achievement. Um, and ultimately, I started bringing extra bread into work, and my boss told me, "Stop giving me this for free. I'll pay you for it." And I started just selling it out of my house on the weekends, having people pre-order and then pick up on Sunday morning. It changed from that to having my own full-time business sometime around when I just got fed up with doing nonprofit work and the limited returns of what I felt like I could accomplish or how I felt like I could help in the world. It just wasn't doing it for me. And I wanted to do something where I was participating more directly in the economy and making something that itself could sit on somebody's dinner table that night, as opposed to working towards efforts that you would really never know if they were helping at all.
Well, let me ask you, why sourdough rather than a regular loaf of bread? What is it about sourdough? And also during COVID, so many people, you couldn't find yeast, were making sourdough at home or trying their own starters. So why sourdough?
I personally, I grew up never liking bread. I never liked bread. I never liked sandwiches. It was always too soggy for me. My mom would send me a sandwich to school, and just the sogginess that would come along with it was just enough to make me never eat my lunches. So I was always a crunchy person, a cracker person. And when I would try sourdough bread, it always stood up to whatever it was with. You know, the chewy crust, the chewy crumb as well. And that was always the bread that I felt like I could still eat, because it stood up that way. And so combine that with, like I mentioned, that sourdough, because it's made with a natural leavening, the starter, rather than yeast, store-bought yeast, it's more of a challenge. There's so many more variables to getting it right. And so when you do get it right, there's more of a thrill. That's why it becomes more of a hobby than some other breads, just because there's that challenge associated with it.
Um, Sourdough has health benefits to it. It's probiotic. What are some of the other benefits to sourdough?
Um, Yeah, so the fact that it has a natural culture in it is definitely cited as a benefit. Now, the bread is baked fully, so it's not like you have these live cultures like in yogurt. However, people do say that even those cultures, once they've been baked, there is still a health benefit from them. The other thing is that I find that there's at least two, off the top of my head, two categories of um, people with specific needs having to do with food that are served better from sourdough than from other bread. So one is diabetics, and the other is people with either
Gluten.
gluten intolerance or gluten sensitivity, not celiac, but other kinds of gluten sensitivities. And so the diabetes thing is that it both comes from the same aspect, which is that there's a fermentation process that happens that breaks down the sugars and other proteins in the bread. And so for the people with diabetes, there's a lower glycemic index. And so we hear from some of our customers that they'll go to their doctor and they'll say that their counts are just as low as they were before if they weren't eating our bread not eating any bread. And then with the people with gluten sensitivities, it's known to break down some of that gluten structure. So we use a bread with a high gluten content, so it still rises. But some of that pre-digestion is done by the fermentation process. And so those people can handle it better.
Um, let's tell people why the tag name, A Milkman for Delicious Breads.
Can I tell you why the name to begin with?
Yes.
Okay. Well, when I first started out, before I even started it out of my house, I had a team of taste testers, about 6 friends, who were, getting deliveries from me of 2 different flavors each weekend. And I had an elaborate spreadsheet where I wanted them to give me feedback on all the different aspects, the taste, how it looks, everything. And my husband was the hardest person to please. He just wasn't. He wasn't really enjoying it, and I also wasn't making such good bread at the beginning. And so his comments were always critical. And finally, when I got it right, his comment in the free write section was just goes down easy, a friendly bread. And so that, to me, it represented a culmination of some hard work. It also represented the support of my testers, and most importantly, the people I love. And it also reflects that we really are a friendly company. We like to, we provide a great level of service for our customers. My favorite is to take phone calls from my customers who are having trouble ordering on the website and just joke with them about technology or whatever, joke with them about whatever, and be good to my customers. So, yeah.
Let's tell people how they can get your wonderful bread.
Yes.
So you're online, everyone, A Friendly Bread, and you've evolved since 2017. So tell people how they can now get the bread and how to order.
Okay. Well, that gets into the tagline. So the milkman aspect is that many of our customers, they order on our website, afriendlybread.com, and they can get either home delivery of their bread order, or we have a series of drop-off spots throughout the community where it's usually a wine store because it makes a good pairing, they're open late, etc. And so it's like a milkman service in that way. People can customize their orders. They can get add-ons like jams from a local company called Neat Nick Preserves. We offer oils in addition.
Honey.
And honey, yes.
Yeah.
So the oils are from Dimitri Olive Oils, and the honey is from Apex Bee Companies. They're all local. And then in addition, in this past year, we've added a lot of different wholesale sites. So we're selling bread now in Eddie's of Roland Park. We're selling bread in a couple other markets, some of the wine stores. And we also have partnered with a number of the CSAs, the programs where you can get a vegetable box every week from a farm. You can order bread as an add-on with a handful of those CSAs and grocery delivery services.
And you're also at the farmers, are you still at the farmers market?
No, I did farmers markets, and I really did not like doing farmers markets. It standing there in the heat or the rain or the cold, it was too much for me. But I did a lot of them for about the first 2 years.
Well, the company has grown. It was at one point, it was you and two other bakers. Now it's you and five other bakers. Am I correct?
I mean, at one point it was me with nobody else, and then yeah. So for the second serious year of the business was me and two other bakers. Now there's five bakers on the team, and we have one full-time delivery driver.
So you're not out doing the deliveries. Used to be you. I know that.
It was.
Uh, yeah. You do a lot of different flavor profiles, and I don't know how you come up with it. I know currently this week your offering was caramelized onion and thyme, cinnamon raisin, rosemary orange zest, multi-seed, a country loaf, and challah. And there's small loaves and big loaves.
Yes.
Where do you come up with your concepts for flavor profiles?
A lot of the initial ideas I got were from the book that I learned to do all of the sourdough baking from, which was the Tartine cookbook, based on the famous bakery in San Francisco. I also was pretty active for a while in a humongous Facebook group called Perfect Sourdough, where just people would share their pictures and recipe ideas all the time. And so it was, the flavors that we have now, they are not too involved. It's not like there's like 100 different, add-ins in each one. So they're the things that people like scaled down to the most basic level they can be.
Right. The Trying to think, what would you say if we're going to go? Is there one or two breads that are the most popular, other
Definitely.
than the basic loaf?
I mean, the basic loaf is the most popular. I've learned in food that it's always the plain thing that you're offering that's the most, high, that's sold the most. But our savory flavors tend to be the ones that sell the most. So our Asiago and roasted garlic is the customer favorite, followed closely by olive and jalapeno Gruyere.
Okay. And from past interviews, I know how much you love olives. I do. I love them. I used to go up, because until this is back on track, go up to the fancy food show in New York, and you make a decision because you have three levels of the Javits Center filled with food. Am I savory or am I sweet? Because you can't do both. And wherever I just zoom in on the olives, I just love olives. I don't know why, but I do.
Look, people
Um,
say, sometimes it's just you have to find the right one. And so finding it embedded in a loaf of bread helps. And I have to also say, I was just watching some old episodes of yours, and I was watching the La Cuchara one, and they have provided a plate of olives that I can get behind. So there are some olives that I can enjoy.
I think I remember from an interview, isn't that where you held your wedding?
Yes, yes,
Well, you did a wedding reception,
yes.
right? Um, you have subscriptions to the breads. Can you explain that, and how does that work?
I think there has been a push by a lot of companies that are just starting out to offer some kind of subscription option. It helps you get on your feet. It helps, some guaranteed revenue. And it also is in line with a lot of, what we've seen out there, like Blue Apron, that kind of thing. It's actually not that popular an offering. So there are some people that order it, and it just means that they don't have to keep ordering every week. So they have a set standing order, and we automatically bill their credit card every week. Some people order they just order the specialty loaf, and so I'll choose which one they get that week. And some people just get a large, simple country loaf sliced every single week, and they are very happy with that.
Okay, well, I just want everybody to know
Yeah.
you were talking about crackers,
Yes.
that you didn't like soggy bread. So let's come to the forefront that we have something new. We have the sourdough toast, and that's a new part of your business. How did that evolve?
It's true. Um, I'm always in search of the perfect crunch. So we started making assorted croutons from our leftover bread. And it turns out those are super delicious too when you make croutons from sourdough. And that's an offering on our site and at the farmers markets. And people just weren't taking us up on that. And so I just wanted to try out another different format of something crunchy. And so we started making little tiny loaves of bread as opposed to like the artisan, more boule type of breads. Just
Right.
little tiny loaves that are based on our recipe, and then just slice them thin and toast them. And so that's what we started to make. And I decided that I really like the idea of having a packaged product in a grocery store. There's some kind of thrill to it. And there's also a sense to me that it's a way to build some sustainability for a food business beyond a fresh product. And
Right.
so it's a way that I want to grow the business in the future. And so I've put some resources into it, made some really beautiful packaging, and we're trying to sell it to grocery stores. We're now in Virginia and DC and Annapolis and Frederick with the toasts.
And everybody, that's sourdoughtoast.com. You can go to that site and see where they are available. And not to forget Lane's website, afriendlybread.com. I was going to ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Have you finished your MBA? I know that you were going to Maryland. Is that a joke because the business took over or what?
It's a little bit of a sore subject.
Okay. Forget I
I
asked. Forget
no
I asked.
no I have not finished my MBA, and every semester I get slower and slower at finishing it because yeah, the business took over. I actually entered the MBA program while I was not running a food business, and it was to help me advance further in the work I was doing, and it has helped. When we've had projects in certain classes, my group members have taken on my business as the subject of their project sometimes, and that's great. But I've switched some of my attention to a different course, which is a course to help me advance the packaged goods thing. It's called Retail Ready, and anybody out there that's interested in doing packaged goods, it's such a great resource. And there's also a podcast called Food Biz Wiz. So I like to engage in those kinds of educational opportunities for any random new direction I take. Um, in 5 years, I have no idea, but I now have responsibility for 6 employees, so I can't just go get a new job. So my options are to figure out which direction to build this business in.
Who has, I know you mentioned your grandfather. Have there been any other inspirations for you for this business or as you've proceeded into the bread baking?
Um, that's a good question. I when I think on the day to day about what I'm up to, it's more I think about business rather than about food. It's just like where my interest has headed, and so what's actually interesting also about my grandfather is he's the only person in my family also to have started and run his own business. Back in the day, he started an employment agency from nothing, and so it's really the other people around me in food businesses that I see doing interesting business related things, and just like having a strong brand presence, and just figuring out new ways to run their businesses.
There, I don't know. I for some reason I thought I saw something in the notes that Michael Pollan in some way. had affected you, or what one of his books.
Oh, I you may have found that somewhere.
You don't
uh,
remember it?
no, I mean, I do remember that there was, I think one of the, I don't know, he might have talked about fermentation and bread and yes. Oh, yes. There was one, I think it was an episode of one of his, he did a Netflix series or something, and there was a whole episode about bread. And that was what inspired me. Thank you, Dara. That was,
So I shouldn't
that,
fire my research assistant,
no,
me, right?
she can keep her job another day.
Okay, good.
Yeah, he inspired me to pick back up the sourdough aspect, because I was just making bread randomly. But yeah, thank you. That's correct.
I did something right. I'm so excited. Um, there's, I enjoy seeing somebody start something from an idea and see it grow, and especially because um, I've worked in the food business in many different aspects. Like I said, I go to the fancy food show every year, except for this past year.
Yeah.
And it might even be a place because they do a spot when everything gets better for new businesses, that it's just a table, but
Mm-hmm.
people pile in there and great opportunities come from that.
That's
So
great.
I'd love to see that. And your toasts are good for pretty much anything that you would use anything like a cracker for, whether it be cream cheese or pate. I don't, I'm sitting here going, what would I put on it? And could be the little meats, whatever you want.
It's
So
true.
I go ahead.
Oh, well, people have been pairing them really well with soft cheeses. And one thing that we found that's great about these toasts is that, this was from one of my customers. She said, she came from a background in fashion, and she said they have a great day to evening wear aspect to them, which is that they're not too involved and too fancy to just have as a snack with the morning tea, but they're also dressed up enough that you could serve them when you're entertaining.
Very well put.
I thought so too.
Let's put that somewhere in the marketing.
Yeah.
Um, what I like to do, and I think you know about this as we sort of come to the end of this, and I want to remind people www.friendlybread.com or www.sourdoughtoast.com. Check it out, order. Okay, so one of the questions is, what was your epic culinary fail?
Um, in one of the earlier years, a couple years ago, we were doing an apple cinnamon challah for Rosh Hashanah, and I thought that I had properly tested it out. We had done a couple weeks of it at the farmers market before, but we got a lot of orders for it, and I was trying to do challah at the time only using sourdough starter, which is the rest of our breads is only sourdough starter, but it takes a lot longer to do that with challah. Um, and so and at the time I had the other bakers, and I was going to be the one who just took care of the challah thing, so they could still fulfill our normal bread orders. And so I did all that. It was like one of our highest grossing days, or that we had that at that point. I got there in the morning, and every single challah, it was maybe like 100 of them that I had baked. Every single one of them was underbaked, underdone. It like it was dough inside. It was disgusting. And in like 2 hours, we had to get them all out on the van for me to deliver to 40 different drop-off sites. And so it was the day after my now lead baker had called me, asking to come back to the company. He had left for a few months to work somewhere else. And so I called him that day. I was like, I need you in here right now. I need you to bake all this challah for me. And we just spent the rest of the day baking and like trying to negotiate with people about, did they really need it today? Could they wait for tomorrow? were they Jewish? Did they actually need it for a Rosh Hashanah thing, or were they just experimenting with it? And we just we triaged, and not everybody ended up happy, but we lived to see the next day. And
well, I'm happy, or else you wouldn't be here, right?
I appreciate that.
We have a comment that came in here. It says, "Do you make babka?"
That I appreciate that question. There are some types of bread that I've made before that I made fine, but they are best left to the professionals. The Trader Joe's chocolate babka is the best I've ever had, and I don't want to try to compete with that. So I've made it before, but no, we don't make babka. We also don't make bagels for that same reason, because there's some other good bagel makers in town.
Well, somebody said, well, they're waiting for the challah and they want to put some chopped liver on it. So
I
we
think
got
that would
that.
be delicious.
Yeah, I could go for that right now.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm marinating some teriyaki lamb chops, shoulder
Oh,
chops.
excellent.
Yep. All right. So, last question. What didn't I ask you that I should have?
Um, I guess you should have asked me how many chickens I have and what their names are.
Well, let me do that. How many chickens do you have and what are their names? And don't you live down in do you live in Woodbury or?
Yeah, we live in Woodbury, but there's some space. Our backyard backs up to the parking lot that Woodbury Kitchen uses for their valet parking.
Okay.
But at the beginning of quarantine, when playgrounds were shut down, the neighborhood kids, like with their parents, would come by to see the chickens and give them a little snack. But we have 10 of them, and I'm not going to go through all of their names, but we got Pollan, we got Bracha, we got Potato Chip, and a few more beauties in the backyard.
So lots of fresh eggs.
Lots of fresh eggs, and a lot of mess and a lot of noise in the morning.
Well, but don't worry, that'll be drowned out. The locusts are coming.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
The 17-year locust. I'm so looking forward to being dive bombed by them again. And the noise level. What I just read that they, for every square acre that there's 3 million locusts. I mean,
That's so many.
So many, those little red-eyed buggers. Okay, so I didn't get all the names of the chicken, but there'll come a time you'll introduce me to all of them. I want to thank you so much and remind people that if you want to get a friendly bread, afriendlybread.com, and go in, order. You can find them. I know a beautiful setup at Eddie's. I saw the crackers there and the bread, and they told me that the bread comes in and goes out instantaneously. They can't even keep it on the shelves. So everyone order. And you know what I forgot to ask? What's the best way? You had said something, was it 7 days of bread? How to keep bread?
Oh, yeah, we have some instructional videos on the website. This is a fresh product and there's not any preservatives in it. So, it changes state very quickly. So we have a little video that tells you what you can do with the bread on each of the 7 days. It's just like tear a hunk out of it the first day. You can use it for a sandwich the second day, toasting, making croutons, etc. On our 7th day, there's some prime footage of me throwing it to the chickens because they need to eat too.
So they're the chickens again.
They figure prominently.
Okay, great. Lane, thank you so much. I've enjoyed your
pleasure. Thank
company and hope to meet you one day in person.
Me too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining us. I want to thank the audience for joining us. This will automatically be up. The Food Enthusiast will be up on our Facebook page. That's the J Moore Facebook page and jmoreliving.com and YouTube within the next couple hours. If you need to reach me, email me at food@jmoreliving.com. My social is at Dara Cooks. We love it when you share our interviews with friends and family. As I always tell you at the end of the show, I want you to stay safe, wear your mask, support local restaurants, and may your plates always, always remain full. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next Thursday.